Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar, and I'm pleased to welcome you to my podcast, The Practice of You. I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles, and I'm fascinated by lawyers who have brought joy and balance to their lives in a career that doesn't always make that easy. In each episode, I'll have a one-on-one conversation with a lawyer who excels professionally, but more importantly is committed to promoting their well-being. Whether athletic, creative, or mindful, there are dozens of ways that lawyers have achieved balance, and we're going to explore that together. You can find this show on all of our major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsh.com. And with that, let's start practicing. Hey there, this is Jeff Sklar, and I'm here with my good friend, Mark Fingerman. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. It's an honor to be here.
Well, that's great to have you. Mark is very well known in Los Angeles. He's an attorney, but he has a mediation practice, which he's been doing for many, many years. Has been very successful at that, and also is a mindfulness practitioner. And today we are going to delve into the world of mindfulness, and I'll talk a little bit about my experiences, and Mark will talk a lot about his, and hopefully I'll learn something. Mark, maybe we could start by telling us about your mediation practice and what mindfulness-based mediation with an edge is.
Yes, happy to tell you about that. Mindfulness-based mediation is just a shorthand for mindfulness-based emotional intelligence. And what that means is, particularly in the context of mediation, is really paying attention to the emotional content. Paying attention in a way that's non-judgmental, that is just paying attention for nothing more than understanding what that person in front of you or the people in front of you, what they're experiencing, what they experience, and how it resonates with them, and how that connects with everything else that's going on in the matter that we're mediating or in their life.
Interesting. So when you're in a mediation and you're dealing with highly charged parties, which the mediations I've been involved with are typically very highly charged parties. Most of the time we can't even have them in the same room. It seems like a tapping into their emotions, that seems like that would be a lot of energy to tap into. I mean, how do you keep the things calm? How do you keep it moving along?
That's an excellent question, and it's something that you learn kind of the hard way sometimes.
Yeah.
That you want to be careful what you wish for. You want them to express their emotions. There's articles written on this. You don't want people to ventilate. You don't want them to get on a roll ranting and yelling and reliving things. So this is where another mindfulness-based skill comes in, and that is deep listening. It's listening, again, without judgment, without an agenda, for the purpose of just understanding and seeing what that person is saying and feeling, so that when you're that deeply involved in perceiving the person, you can see it coming and start dialing it back. There's another part of this mindful listening, which involves, and it's not game playing, it's I watch the breath. I can see the breathing. It's something I teach. And I can actually, through my breathing, if I start to slow my breathing down and just become calmer and receptive to their energy, it calms them down.
It's almost like innate.
Yeah, it's innate, but it takes training and discipline to do this. I got to tell you, what I imagine is that I'm porous, like a piece of Swiss cheese.
Yeah,
and the negative energy that's coming at me, instead of blocking it, which is what our impulse would be, I literally open up to it and just let it flow right through me, so that all that anger, that hatred, that frustration, that anxiety is just coming out, going through me. And as I'm doing that, it's calming it down.
So that's a great segue, because I know that in your personal life, the foundation for this mindfulness-based mediation practice is your mindfulness practice in your life.
Right.
Not only your personal practice of mindfulness, but you're a teacher on top of everything else of mindfulness, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But maybe we should take a step back, talk a little bit about what mindfulness is, because I'm sure for some people who either haven't been exposed to it or have limited exposure to it, it might seem a little woo-woo, right? and what does mindfulness mean to you?
Well, I tend to, again, stand on the shoulders of giants. I follow what my teachers say, which resonates with me. I think they captured it. And as one teacher put it, mindfulness is a way of paying attention on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. And I say without judgment or otherwise processing what you're hearing. You're there with an open heart and with curiosity. So with kindness, curiosity, a little bit of compassion. And again, doing this is so powerful because you see more of what's going on. Mm-hmm. You hear more in the tone of voice. You're not being distracted by your thoughts. That's why meditation is the training platform for this, because we'll get into this. When you do mindfulness-based meditation, you're literally learning to train your deeper awareness to stay where you want it to be and not get caught in that very active part of your brain that's always chewing on things.
When did you start practicing mindfulness, and how did you learn how to do it?
That's a long story, and I will shorten it to the best I can in this format. It started with so-called extreme sports, adventure sports. Started out surfing, which led to mountain biking because I was given a mountain bike as a Christmas gift.
That's a nice gift.
A Jewish boy never got a bike for Christmas. Here you go.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And I thought, what am I going to do with this? Well, the earthquake hit L.A., the gym got shut down, and I thought, well, I might as well ride this bike and then flash forward hardcore into it. I mean, getting, better and better bikes. I got training at it. Mm-hmm. Still continued with surfing. This was for the days when there weren't swell, right?
How old are you when this is all going on?
In my 40s.
Okay. Got it.
And so the one thing that the sports, and then that led to snowboarding. So the one thing all these sports have in common is a high level of risk. And if you're not paying...
I thought it was that I'm not good at any of them. That's what I also has in common.
And they also have gravity. They're all
right.
Gravity sports. But if you very naturally learn to shut out everything and pay full attention because you get hurt. You learn that pretty quickly. And then this keeps going. So I keep taking it up. Finally, I stacked it one day, real good and hard, on a ride with a bunch of people. We'll spare the details. I went headfirst into a boulder on a series of drops, tucked at the last minute, slapped into this boulder.
Oof.
And shattered like C7. It didn't require surgery, but it was close. And the doctors told me, you can't do anything for a while unless you want us to fuse you now. They said, no surfing, no mountain biking. We don't want you doing this with your neck. And so, okay, I'm a young trialer at that point and really hyper. I really needed this outlet. And I'm reading the LA Times when I still got the newspaper, and the travel section talked about yoga retreats, right? And I went, a yoga retreat? So I said, all right, I'll go try this yoga thing. And I went to a yoga class and said, okay, this is interesting. And I'm sweating profusely, right?
Yeah.
Right, just really sweating. And then... So I went to a few of those, and I'm reading this LA Times article about yoga retreats. Mm-hmm. And I went, maybe I'll go to this place in Montana. And I didn't know anything about, that you got to look at who the teachers are and what they're teaching. So I wound up going to Montana to the Feathered Pipe Ranch. That's a whole story in itself. And it was a retreat that was based on chakras.
Mm.
Okay, the energy centers in the body, which is a really subtle practice. Mm-hmm. So long story short, left that completely energized. Then I met my teacher, Max Strom, again, going to the same school, Maha Yoga, that used to be in Brentwood. Mm. And then I became one of Max's students who became eventually my teacher for teacher training.
That's
and
right.
How did that happen? because I wanted to deepen my practice, as we say. So I started teacher training with no intention of teaching. And I had also started my LL.M program at Pepperdine with no intention of becoming a mediator for decades. I just wanted to get it out of the way. Then I got an illness that completely devastated me for months. I had a nervous system illness, meningitis.
Oh, wow.
And coming through that, I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't watch TV. And I started to read. And I picked up a book called by Thich Nhat Hanh, who I know you're interested in, called The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. And I'd bought that book like a year or two before on the way out to retreat with Max, but I never read the book. And I started reading it, and it dawned on me that all these years I'd been doing yoga, but for years I really didn't have a meditation practice. And to fully access the Buddha's teachings, I really needed to understand and live meditation. And so during that illness, I also saw my life go before my eyes many times and how meaningless it was. I didn't have a family, too busy working, caught up in my life. And I just got this download, be of service, be of service. And be of service doing what? Teach yoga. Well, what am I possibly going to teach? Teach what Max teaches. You'll be fine. Yeah. How am I going to support myself doing that? Finish your training, become a mediator, bring peace into the world.
Wow. Yeah. What a purpose. But that's interesting because that's...
I didn't ask for this, okay?
So, we're in a constant state of evolution.
Yeah.
Right? So this is not 23-year-old Mark who gets hit by a bolt of lightning and says, I'm going to be of service, or, I've discovered my purpose. I mean, there have been periods of time in my life where I've wrestled with what is my purpose, and it's never hard to define for me from a family standpoint. But, when you look at your career and you look at the things you're contributing to your community and what you're doing, it is nice when you find something that connects with your insides and you can bring that out. And so you teaching and being of service in the world, that's special. So when you're meditating, maybe talk a little bit about that. Is it something you do once a day, twice a day? Is it for a long time? How do you feel when you're doing it?
I'm still a yogi. I mean, I don't just sit. My day starts before dawn, or just as the sun's coming up, with walking meditation, barefoot on wet grass in front of my house, probably for 10 minutes, and then indoors for, depending on what I have going on that morning, it could be another half hour to an hour. So there's some yoga, some breath-initiated movement exercises, which Max Strom developed from a combination of Qigong and just Hatha yoga. And then at some point there's sitting involved where I actually sit, but that might be for, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But understand that during that whole practice, I'm doing the same work, which is resting on my breath. It's what the Buddha taught as the original meditation, is just resting on your breath. Why would you do that? Because it's just enough of an activity, it's just enough of something to draw you away from your busy mind and give you an anchor. So just watching the in-breath and the out-breath, the in-breath, doing walking meditation through my asana, my standing practices. And then by the time I'm sitting, I'm already in that space. So again, this form of meditation, mindfulness-based meditation, I'm doing it now, okay, meaning that I'm as present as I can be, watching, keeping my breath as an anchor so that I'm able to focus exactly on where I am.
And when you're having that experience, I want to push a little deeper.
Yeah.
How are you feeling during it? Is it a state of relaxation? Is it a state of almost sleep? Is it a state of challenge because you're trying to corral thoughts and move them over to the side? What is going on inside of your mind when you're meditating?
It's
Or is it all the above?
I'm laughing just because, we have these voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
mine usually say, I'm hungry. Those are the voices
and I can't, the little animal voices in my head,
Yeah.
those are there. And they're just amusing. So basically where I get to in my pretty much daily meditation practice is just a point of equilibrium where I'm aware of my deeper presence, which my sense of self starts to dissolve completely, which is a wonderful thing to obtain. And where there's no more I anymore, where I'm just here. And there's no I'm here. It's just, the concept of the Tao. You can't describe the Tao the minute you start to describe it, you've lost it. Well, there's this primal sense of existence that is it's so joyful and restful, and it's just there all the time. And so you can't try to access it right away, but if you just let yourself settle into it, you do.
Yeah. With my meditation practice, each time is its own experience, right? Sometimes I'll be very ready to just drop in and experience that. Other times, it's a little hard to corral myself. The end of the day can be a little bit more challenging for me, but that's actually the time that I need it the most. And focusing on my breath, and whether it's 10 minutes or 45 minutes that it goes on, for me, it's a funny thing. It's not going blank, and I don't think I'm certainly no professional yogi, and I've got a lot to learn, but I will occasionally find times where I'm successful at just focusing on my breath. Then work might creep in, and I'll say to myself, oh, I'm thinking. That's not what I want to do at this moment, so I'm just going to go back and focus on my breath. But that's something actually to talk about, because is there a right and wrong way to meditate?
It's more dynamic than that. I don't want to say, well, it's whatever works for you, because that's just not so. I can tell you that setting a goal for what you want the meditation to be for is a good start. For example, if you just want to calm down and be more grounded and be more centered, then you can do that fairly simply by learning to do something like rest on a single point of focus. For me, it's the breath. It could be a mantra. People use mantra meditation. People will use guided meditation. It's very popular these days with apps. But that is level one meditation. Shamatha, stopping and calming in the classical world. Then there's insight meditation. Also in Sanskrit, it's called vipassana. And this is where once you've gotten to the point where you're fairly stable, your nervous system is fairly stable while you're sitting, then you get to the point where you can watch your busy mind. You can watch the thoughts come and go and be curious about them. I wonder where that comes from. I wonder why this matters to me. I wonder what that is. Or you can have something that you want to focus on. Like I want to send more, loving kindness into the world. So you can do a certain meditation where you're sending loving kindness out into the world. So recognizing the different levels, but something that is almost completely missed out in the world of practice guides for meditation or people teaching meditation is that our nervous systems, particularly in Western culture, are very imbalanced. We're very jacked up with caffeine and all the stimulation from social media,
traffic,
and not exercising, driving.
Right.
And so, the sympathetic, the parasympathetic nervous systems are completely out of whack.
Yeah.
Completely out of whack. We're in fight or flight mode most of the time.
Which is really lousy for you.
Right. And
by the way.
thankful to my teacher, to Max Strum, what he taught us in teacher training, he said, to take people off the street, they've come in from a work day, and have them just sit, they'll sit and they'll close their eyes, but they're just caught in the same, maelstrom of thoughts. So what we need to do first is soften the nervous system. How do you do that? With breath work. Mm-hmm. So, for example, what I teach when people are brand new is don't try to meditate right away. Why do you want to do that to yourself? It's torture. Just do some breathing exercises.
Yeah.
Do the breathing exercises for 3 to 5 minutes a day. Do that for a week. Do it for 10 days. Then add the meditation. Because then once you have this idea or the feeling, the sense of being able to regulate your nervous system and start to calm it down, then sitting becomes something you look forward to.
Yeah. It's a time of day where it's yours. And for me, it's priceless. I only started doing it 2 years ago. It was extremely important during my long COVID, which was like 6 months. That was rough. And the meditation was a time where I could, and I had various types of things that intentions, let's call it. My main intention was to try and reassure myself that I was going to move beyond that state and get better and all of that, and to find some relief. And I really did find, even at the worst times with the long COVID, that I found a tremendous amount of relief that would last beyond the meditation. It's not magic. It just was the idea of ramping down your nervous system, and I could calm myself down. I'd have a time to not focus on doctor's appointments or whatever I was, dealing with that day, and really just focus on my body, be aware, feel my feet, feel my chest rise and fall. And when you start to have that awareness, and it doesn't feel like a waste of time, but actually you're getting something out of it. As I've gotten better at it, I'll notice when my body relaxes. And there will be a point, and it's not in the beginning of the meditation, but a few minutes in, I could try in the beginning to say, okay, body, relax now, and it doesn't work. But at some point I become aware that I'm tense and I can let go. And it's as if everything just relaxes a couple centimeters, and your whole body. And for me, it's become very powerful. But the thoughts are a challenge. They continue to be a challenge because I have thoughts every single time I meditate.
Of course.
And I have thoughts probably within every minute that I'm meditating. Some portion of that minute goes is not just, I'm not a blank Etch-a-Sketch, but I'm thinking, my mind's moving here, my mind's moving there. And it's not like all worries either. Sometimes it's just random stuff that'll pop in my head. But I know that that's not the moment for that. But I think a lot of people have the notion that thoughts are bad. That if you're having thoughts, you're not meditating correctly. So what are you supposed to do with those thoughts?
I want to go back to something you said that before we go to I'll address that. When you were ill, did you notice something? Then this will happen quite naturally when you're just calm and you're sitting and not distracting yourself, that your preoccupation with your illness starts to go away. And you're just here.
Yeah.
You're here sitting and you're as ill as you are, but you start to let go of that worrying. How much longer is this going to last? How much more of this can I take? Is this ever going to get better? Because that's half the suffering people go through, whether it's something physical or something mental, is the worrying and the ruminating.
Well, that's the present moment, right?
And the meditation brings you present.
Correct.
And so, I don't feel well, but this isn't so bad.
When I meditate and I'm in the present moment and I'm just focusing on being aware of my breath coming in and being aware of my breath coming out, there's no space to worry, because at that moment, in the present moment, I'm good.
Exactly.
Right? I'm okay. And I know that because why? I'm breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know something's working right. And yeah, when you get back, okay, you're done meditating, you go back to whatever you're doing, and now you're worrying about who's going to pick up food for dinner for the kids, and I got this thing I got to do, and you're worried about the future, and boy, I hope I didn't say something stupid on that call this morning, and now I'm worried about the past, and that's all. It's what we all do, but it's noise.
Speaking of noise, going back to what you said about the busy mind, and now I'm going to share what I learned from my meditation teacher, Dr. Lauren Roche, who's been a meditation teacher now for going on 50 years.
Wow.
And I met him in the yoga community. Great meeting that we had at a yoga teacher conference. It was really quite hilarious. But at any rate, what Lauren taught me was to avoid making the mistake that a lot of teachers make and saying, referring to the mind as a busy mind. This whole idea that somehow that mind is an annoyance and a distraction is far from the reality of it. As Dr. Roche says, he says our minds are naturally humming with energy. Mm-hmm. Thoughts are coming and going, feelings are coming and going. We're aware of them for a reason. It's only in the very recent part of human history that we're not under constant threat. Right. And in many parts of the world, people are still under constant threat. So that so-called busy mind is busy for a reason. It's an evolutionary survival trait that allows us to do what? To multitask. Multitasking is not a modern thing. It's an ancient thing. Think of an animal in the forest. It's looking for opportunities. It's looking for threats. It's always looking. Even when it's doing something, it's mindful of everything else that's going on around it. And think of the millions of years, and if you follow evolution, even millions of years before that in our prior forms as beings on the planet. So it's hardwired into us to have this constantly running background, chewing on things, what's in front of us, what's coming up, what happened in the past. So it's a very healthy mind. We don't want to, denigrate it and try to shut it off. So what I teach, what I was taught to teach is don't try to stop thinking. But you don't have to be caught in it. You can notice that you're getting involved in that, and then you can bow to those thoughts. Don't push them away. Bow to them and say, "Thank you. I'll get right back to you," and then just go back to resting on your breath. Yeah. And what happens when you're gentle with it? It's kind of like if you ever have an itch when you're meditating, and you don't want to scratch.
I think that always happens to me.
Yeah, it's like it's
usually on my nose.
There's this part of this something in there that just wants to mess with us, right? Yeah. It's like, because if you get an itch on your nose and you scratch it, then you get an itch in your arm, then you get an itch on your leg. It's just.
Well, and I'm neurotic. I'm going to say, oh, now I moved. I broke the whole thing. I got to start over.
But something fascinating happens. You get that itch, and you have that urge to scratch it, which again is primal wiring, because insects can kill us. So we're wired to scratch. So the doctors tell us to avoid being bitten by insects. Is soften your awareness around it, and just notice it, and be curious and kind to it. What happens is it'll ramp up and get really intense, and then it starts to just fade, and it just kind of goes off into space. And it's really quite something just to just let that itch go.
I've heard the metaphor, I think it's a metaphor, of clouds. That as thoughts roll by, if you think of your mind as a blue sky, I'll think of mine as a blue sky, that as thoughts roll in, there are clouds that are rolling by, and you observe them moving by during your meditation, and you let them keep moving. And the same goes for feelings, right? I've gotten moderately better at observing my feelings even when I'm not meditating, but bringing just a touch of mindfulness into my life so that maybe something happens at work, or I'm going to react. I think I might react, and I feel the most common feeling is frustration. Right? Boom, frustration has set in. If I'm being mindful, I say, "Oh, look at that. I'm feeling frustrated." Okay. And as opposed to just reacting and jumping on that train and going off whatever cliff it wants to take me off, let it pass, and that goes to me just trying to be just less reactive in life generally, which mindfulness has helped me with.
And what you just touched on is actually a technique. It was taught by another teacher. We call it notice and name it. Notice and name it. If you notice a particularly pernicious, destructive thought going on, just notice it, name it. And when you do that, name it, like, I'm angry now, or I'm angry about X right now. And you name that, it takes the energy away from it. And now I see you. And then once you look it right in the face and go, thank you, not now, it just no.
Yeah.
It just kind of fades away.
So, coming back to lawyers and mediators and the people who work in the legal profession, which is largely who we're speaking to for this show, but it really makes sense for anybody. There's a lot of stress. There's also a lot of time pressure. We were joking before the show that I nearly broke my neck trying to get here on time so that I could scarf down some kebabs and get up here so that I wouldn't be late for my mindfulness podcast, which is ridiculous when you think about that. But that's sort of Los Angeles in a nutshell in some ways. Can mindfulness help with stress? If there's, for somebody who's an attorney or any job that's stressful for that matter, but how does it help? Because if I don't do it, if I've never done it, or I try it once and I use an app and I'm like, okay, well, that was fine, but I didn't really get a lot out of it. How does somebody get to the point where they're feeling a difference in their life in doing this? How do they get themselves there?
Well, again, there's different levels to this. The first level is just learning that you have something to say about how your nervous system is operating, and using breath work to actually moderate that and to have some level of control over moving it down, taking the pressure down. Okay.
Yeah.
Then, and this is where the training aspect comes, is when you learn to sit comfortably, when you learn to just notice that you can rest on your breath, call it spacious awareness. It's not focused, concentrating. It's an open, spacious awareness of the breath. Once you realize you can do that and kind of let the thoughts run and not get caught in them, that's training. And that's the point of mindfulness meditation, is not just to make you feel good or to make you less stressed, but so that as you engage the world when you're not sitting in meditation, you're more aware of what you're doing, you're more aware of what other people are doing, particularly emotionally, at a meta level, not just the particular thing, but you can see more fully what's going on so that you don't get as caught up in things.
Yeah.
So that when you're driving and somebody cuts you off and you feel that emotion come up, you notice that emotion, you take a couple of breaths and let it go. And that middle finger stays in your lap.
Yeah. Well, I think we can all benefit from that.
Yeah.
I counsel my children on reacting and, frankly, not reacting.
Right.
I counsel myself on that as well. I'm imperfect in that regard. You mentioned earlier in the conversation, Buddhism and those teachings, and they're, this is an ancient religion, different doctrines within its strands. Does somebody have to learn about the Buddha and his teachings to be able to do this? I mean, is there a connection there, or can somebody say, well, that's not really my thing, but I really do want to figure out how to take my temperature down a little bit. I think that's an important thing to mention.
Good question. First, I want to address one thing. The Buddha didn't set out to create a religion. From the people I've studied, he was a philosopher and a teacher.
Yeah.
He just had a very practical path to a life that's more enjoyable, more beneficial, and better for the people around you. And that's what he taught. He didn't talk. There was no belief system at that time. There were no images of gods flying on chariots and stuff which got adapted by other cultures taking his teachings. So, and I'm not a Buddhist. I follow what I understand to be the core of the Buddha's original teachings, but I don't ascribe to any of the sects or anything that came after. There's a spiritual quality to those teachings, which comes as a consequence of the practice itself. But that may or may not be something you're interested in. All I can tell you is look at the agencies, the different entities, the government agencies, the sports franchises that have mindfulness as part of their training. So for lawyers, I encourage you, even if you have not a care in the world about making the world a better place and all you want to do is kill it as a lawyer and to get the best results you can, this will help you do that. But, caution, it may make you a kinder, gentler person, which will also make you more effective because people are more attracted to people who are kind than they are to people who are the contrary. Yeah. And you can be just as effective. I was a trial lawyer, and I was known for being very aggressive in my trial practice. And in the latter days of it, some of my colleagues, particularly at my last firm, they say, you're not the same tough guy you were when you started. I go, well, I am. I've just learned there's other things. Mm-hmm. And I get, if you notice, I'm getting the same results, but in a way they're better. There's things that are not taken off the table on purpose now because it's better to leave somebody with something, even if you could have taken it. Yeah. So just to shorten it, you can learn to regulate your nervous system, be less stressed, be able to pay deeper attention at will to what you're doing, and to get better results at whatever it is you're doing. So it's kind of, why wouldn't you want to do that? And it takes 3 to 5 minutes a day to start.
Yeah, well that's really interesting in and of itself. I mean, I can think of cars I've meditated in on the way to the airport.
Right.
Certainly meditated on planes. Today I meditated in a waiting room. No one was there, but I mean, not just me. And this is something where you could, if you've got a few minutes and you want to level out, it's certainly something you bring in. And as to Buddhist teachings, I think there are many lessons there for just how to engage and move through life in a way that is more, certainly can be more agreeable with you. It's with less friction, as opposed to fighting against certain forces, acknowledging them, and learning how to live with them, and to not not to suffer in the same way. We were talking about quotes, and you said to me that there's a quote, "The busy mind says anywhere but here." So first of all, who said that? And what does that mean to you?
That was Max Strom. But this is back in the early days when I was starting with him. So this is 25 years ago. Hardcore young trial lawyer, hardcore mountain biker. I mean, I came into his class, with gashes in my body, and he'd see them, and I could tell you stories about what he would say about that. But so I was not spiritually inclined. And why was I in yoga? Because it calmed me down and it made me feel good. That pretty simple. And you know, it was just easy, a very easy thing to get to and do. But Max had a style that was very different, probably still is different today, where yoga teachers tend to talk through the entire class. It's like they feel like if there's any dead air space, they're not doing their job. They're talking about the different muscles and what you're engaging now. And Max would give an instruction and then dead air. He'd say something and dead air. And he would plant these little seeds of awareness, like you'd be in down dog for 3 minutes, which is a long time. And he would just say, and one day he just said, and the busy mind says, anywhere but here. That planet, a thing growing. And then later I learned, where this comes from is the idea, and this is one of the foundations of mindfulness training, is that we are constantly transcending the present moment. We're either planning about the future, worrying about what's going to happen, ruminating about the past, worrying about why didn't we do this or do that, as if by worrying you could make it different. And or ruminating on the past, you could make it as if by worrying about, something that's going to happen in the future, that's going to do anything. I think it was Mark Twain said, is known to have said, I've had a life filled with terrible calamities, most of which never happened. Right? So that's where, the busy mind says anywhere but here. It constantly wants to pull you. And again, this is not a defect.
Yeah.
In my studies of, not formal studies, but my readings in neurobiology, this is an evolutionary thing. It's like, of course we're thinking about the future. There's got to be enough wood for the fire. We got to have enough water to drink. And ruminating on the past, it's like, why did Bob get that big piece of meat? It should have been for me and my family, Right. So we're learning from things that happen. But getting caught up in it all the time is just, you can live that way.
Oh, I lived that way for
you can live
a long
that way,
time, not even understanding that there was a present moment.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe once in a while I would get it if I saw a sunset. Sometimes you'll trip into a present moment.
Right.
You see a sunset, you're on a mountaintop, some vista, and you go, wow, this is really something. And you've unintentionally landed in the present moment. And then you're off back, and you leave the present moment behind. But the beauty of it is that it's always there for you. And that's actually where life is.
It's the only place we ever are. One of my teachers refers to it as the eternal present moment.
Yeah.
Because once you rest in it, there's this thing that opens up, and it feels like when you let go of the future, when you let go of the past, this present moment is huge. Mm-hmm. And it does feel timeless, because it is timeless, because the clock's gone.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, as mundane as this sounds, now that I'm through at least the thick of the long COVID, and I'm back in the gym and I'm throwing weights around and I'm doing my stuff, I noticed the other day I was doing some sort of dumbbell exercise. And I said to myself, intentionally, I am strong today. And what probably the better way to say it would be is I'm strong right now, because I was trying to be very present in the exact moment I was in, and to enjoy that fact that at this moment right now, I'm throwing up some weights and I'm experiencing that, and not sitting there worrying about what I'm going to do after working out or whatever. It sounds a little meatheadish, but the point is being present. Let me ask you this. You're a mediator, and it struck me with Buddhism and the concept of the middle way. There's something that made a lot of sense there. I don't know if you see a connection between the two or not. My very novice understanding of the middle way is essentially the Buddha counsel to avoid extremes and to try to live your life down a middle path. Now, maybe that doesn't sound so exciting when you say that out, or I say that out loud, but this is the practical advice that was given. Do you think that the middle way is something that you would apply as a mediator? Does that even factor into your practice at all?
Well, it factors in from the standpoint that it's a foundation. It's a foundational way to live. And my understanding of the Buddhist teaching on that is that there's the extremes of complete deprivation, which is what he went through for years, eating 1 grain of rice a day and almost starving to death. And then there's the people that he saw in the world he came from as a nobleman, as a prince, with the excessive, attention to pleasures, and, eating and drinking and sex. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those, but when you get too involved or too extreme with either side, you lose the balance. You lose the sense of being here right now in this world and fully engaged with what you're doing, which is where we live anyway. And for mediation, middle path for me, it's one of my teachers. I've been so blessed with such wonderful teachers. Ralph Williams III is one of the better known lawyer mediators at the shop where I was raised, ADR Services. Ralph made it a point to me because he knew my higher goals of making the world a kinder, gentler place. He looked at me and he said, "Just be very clear on something, Mark." He says, "You're here to get it done." Ralph goes, "Here to get it done."
Yeah.
And meaning the lawyers are your clients. They're paying you to get their case settled. Okay.
Yeah.
So while you might be able to, show people a path to a better life or maybe teach the lawyer how to avoid getting their clients into this kind of conflict, good, noble goals. Keep focused on what your mission is, what you're hired to do. So that's something for me that I have to always keep in mind, because it's very tempting to get caught into, the deeper issues that are being reflected in a conflict and starting to spend time on those. Got to be mindful of the time.
Yeah.
And got to get it done. So.
And we know everything happens in the last 2 hours of the mediation.
Well, it's interesting because as a lawyer, before I got into as a mediator, I thought, why don't we bother with full day mediations? Just tee up a half day. It's the last
show up at 4 o'clock.
It's the last two hours. Well, what I've learned as a mediator is because of the emotional content, we need all those hours first to get everything organized. What's really at stake here? What do we really need to get this done? And to give people time to calm down.
Yeah.
Because it's just this irony. Lawyers don't want to share briefs. You have to do it all the time in court unless you're going in ex parte. You have to share your briefs, but not your mediation briefs. So as a mediator, I'm going back and forth room to room sometimes for the first 2-3 hours just sharing viewpoints because the lawyers don't want to share briefs. Okay, so that's why we need a full day. Let me just say this.
Runway.
Let me say this for the lawyers out there. Unless liability is not an issue, you've already decided who's paying who, and it's just about how much, then we can do it in a half day.
Yeah.
Okay. If we've got a complaint and a cross complaint, and and you want me to knock that out in 4 hours, I'll try.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might get you a result. I don't know how happy your client's going to be with it, but we'll get something done.
Yeah.
But so that's why.
So getting close to the end, what haven't we talked about relative to mindfulness, meditation, and how it's helped you or you've accessed it in your personal life, or how it helps you manage your career? Or is there anything else you want to speak to before we start to wrap up?
Something I would want to speak to for those of you out there who have an interest in this, but you've often thought that, I don't have time for this. I'm so busy and I've got so many other things, and I'm not going to give up going to the gym. I'm not going to give up doing my other stuff. One of the hardest things it is about what I teach is how simple it is. It's so simple that busy, complex minds We're used to dealing with complex issues and quantities of issues. Think, how could something so simple work?
Yeah.
And my response to that is, give it a try.
Yeah. It's ancient.
Yeah.
It's ancient.
So speaking of giving it a try.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you ask the question, well, how does somebody do it? Well, we can try it right now for a couple minutes.
Let's do it right now. Okay.
So we're going to do, Mark's going to lead us through a 3-minute or so, whatever, guided meditation. And I'm going to get my third meditation in of the day. Look at me.
And I'm going to set my timer because I don't like to look at my watch when I do this. So let's begin this way. Wherever you are, sit in a way that you're as upright as you comfortably can be. You're probably in a chair, which is fine. If you can, if it's at all comfortable for you, try sliding a bit forward in the chair so that your lower back can take its natural curvature. Because sitting with our backs pressed into a chair does the opposite. This opens up the airways and the energy channels in the body. And now bring up a half smile, like a Mona Lisa smile, even if you don't feel like it. Bring up a half smile. And let's take 3 mindful breaths together, in and out of the nose. Empty the lungs completely. Take a deep breath in all the way to the top. And exhale through the nose slowly and completely, all the way out. Another deep breath in. Keep that half smile and a deep breath out. Another deep breath in through the nose and a deep breath out. Notice the breath moving through the body. Be curious about it. Our minds are naturally humming with energy. Thoughts are always present. We're not trying to stop thinking. We can, however, notice that we have a deeper awareness, and that deeper awareness can rest on a single point of focus. Here, it's the breath. But keep it open, spacious awareness of the breath. So as thoughts arise, and even if you get caught in them, which will happen, notice that's happening and gently return to just resting on the breath. So there's a natural coming and going. Just let that happen. And gently open the eyes. Just notice. Shift happens.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Mark, thanks for coming in. This was really great.
Again, it was an honor and a privilege, Jeff, after all these years I've known you, to see you grow and develop in your firm, and not only develop this great firm, but carve out the time to do things like this as a service for the community. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining us today on The Practice of You, hosted by me, Jeff Sklar. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsh.com. I really appreciate your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others. Until next time, enjoy the present moment and don't forget to practice you. This podcast is considered attorney advertising by the California State Bar. The discussions in this podcast do not constitute professional advice of any kind, including without limitation, medical, legal, or business. And you are advised to consult with your own physicians, lawyers, and other advisors before undertaking any activities discussed in this podcast.